Members, we turn now to the Patents, Trans-Tasman Patents Attorney and Other Matters Amendment Bill. Point of order, the Honourable Ruth Dice.
I seek leave for all provisions of the Patents, Trans-Tasman Patent Attorneys and Other Matters Amendment Bill to be taken as one debate with separate votes on each at the end.
Leave is put for that purpose. Is there any objection? There appears to be none. You don't need to. The question is that Part 1 stand part. The Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
Mr Chairman, Labor will support this bill.
Sorry, order. I should have said the question is that Parts 1 and 2, Schedules 1 and 2, Clauses 1 to 3 stand part.
Mr Chairman.
The Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
Mr Chairman, as I outlined in the last part of the process a couple of weeks ago, Labor will support the bill. But I won't, and we will not labour the process tonight. There will be a number of calls from colleagues. This is a piece of legislation we should get through, but I want to pose a number of questions to the Minister, and I'm sure he can anticipate some of those questions. Sir, this is a bill which in large part proposed originally an amalgamation of the SAP and SCP systems, in large part, in line, I suppose, as we on the Select Committee saw it, to benefit the acquisition and processing of patents in a global sense, trans-Tasman. The government, in its infinite wisdom, chose to reverse that process for a number of reasons, and I signalled in the last reading of this piece of legislation that I have to say the original government proposal opposition members supported, in line with amalgamations around banking and accountancy and other industries that have been had their processes amalgamated in the past. We felt that this was a good idea from the government. Our focus was about ensuring that those who are involved in innovation, who are involved in intellectual property, who seek patents, which are one, expensive, and two, difficult to obtain, especially for the smaller end of town. If this could ease that transition, provide a cheaper process, provide a less compliance costs, etc., then we felt it was a good idea. We were surprised, I've got to say, when the position was reversed, and the position that was advanced by officials was that after some analysis, if I can put it that way, such that it was, that this proposal was of no greater benefit to the industry, and it's interesting to define what they meant by industry, because our view was they were talking about the patent attorneys as opposed to the innovators. We had a couple of submissions of the likes of Fisher and Paykel, huge contributors to intellectual property, not only New Zealand but around the world. But we as members, I think, across the divide, we're interested in the benefits or lack of for the smaller innovator. So officials told us basically that the scales had fallen from their eyes and that this was no longer a viable proposal because it had basically not a lot of net benefit to the industry. On probing those officials over many days, we asked, for instance, and I wonder if the Minister might be able to respond, well, what costings, cost savings, cost-benefit analysis had been done around these proposals. And I remember writing this down, and colleagues, I'm sure on both sides of the aisle will recall this, officials saying, well, back of the envelope, and our best guess, and their direct quotes, is, and they rattled off some figures. And I recall saying to officials, well, I actually have, and I do put on record, some sympathy for the Minister, because if that was the depth of the analysis that was served up to him, is it any wonder that there was some delay and some conjecture about which way we should go on this? And at one point in the Select Committee, and I'm very thankful for it was rather unusual, but in a private session, the Minister's senior advisor was good enough to come down, sit in the meeting, so that we had a direct pipeline to the Minister, so that the Minister would understand that the angst with which not only opposition members were feeling, but also, I would wager, government members, was, to be blunt, with the lack of quality advice that we were receiving before the committee. Now, this is not a political bill. We agree we will support the bill. and we would have supported the original premise that was put to us. But it is a little ironic when a government simply takes the major provision out, reverses it. There has to be a substantive reason why. And so, Minister, what I'd ask of you, through you, sir, is that if you could give us some reassurance that this reversal is for the benefit of the innovators. It is, as officials told us, that the net benefit to innovators of the Trans-Tasman amalgamation was so minuscule that it wasn't worth doing. That begs the question as to why this proposal was ever served up to a minister and a cabinet. But if you could give us some assurances around that, sir, because I'm loath to criticise officials. I do it very rarely. I think we have world-class public servants, but I have to say, I don't know if government members will admit this publicly, but I have to say there was a lot of cross-party unanimity, Mr Chair.
The Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
There was a lot of cross-party unanimity in trying to get this bill back to the House so that it would work. There is actually no politics in patents, for goodness sake. We actually want it to work. But what we were met with was substandard, at best, advice, where officials had not gone away and done a proper cost-benefit analysis when a select committee was confronted with an analysis which was quote-unquote back of the envelope, quote-unquote best guess. Then as we diligently, and the chair, I have to say, of the committee was extremely good in letting a free-flow interrogation, if you will, take place of these ideas so we could tease out the policy propositions. But when you're left with that sort of advice, and the other advice was, well, basically just trust us because we're the experts. And the thing that we found difficult also, Minister, through you, sir, was that the industry, quote-unquote, that actually had not been consulted with, because my colleague Claire Curran and others went and subsequently, with the agreement of the committee, consulted with the innovators, and Claire Curran will identify some of those in her contribution, actually consulted with them. They had never been interacted with. And our objective was simply to get a piece of legislation that would facilitate the protection of intellectual property for the innovative community, especially those in the smaller end of town, to protect those fabulous and good ideas that our entrepreneurs have in this country. It is extremely expensive and extremely difficult to get patent protection. And I've got to put on record that the committee was less interested in the notion of patent attorneys being sort of, it was sort of put to us that life would end as we know it, that patent attorneys would go out of business, that they would leave town, that they were incapable almost of adjusting to a market that may change through legislation or regulation, and this somehow was a doomsday scenario. Well, I've got to say I was less interested in that and more interested in what the benefits or otherwise could be for those entrepreneurs and those innovators, not those patent attorneys whose income is derived by charging fees. So, sir, I'd simply put to you, through you, sir, to the Minister, could he give us some background and some assurance that this proposal is the valid one, given it is a government reversal, that there is some net benefit for that smaller end of town of innovator, because at the moment, even though the Labor Party, sir, is supporting the legislation, we do so with a degree of reticence, given the poor quality advice that we received during the Select Committee process. And as I say, sir, I feel some depth of sympathy for the Minister. If what was served up to us was served up to him, then I suspect he had some difficulty in coming to a decision as to which was the best course of action to take in respect of this bill. So we want to expedite this tonight, but I would appreciate, sir, through you, if the Minister could give us some assurance on those points.